The afternoon unfolded in a manner that was utterly unremarkable where time seemed to stretch languidly and the outside air was imbued with the heavy warmth of summer. Having just completed me coffee, I remained clad in my cozy linen pants and a well-worn, soft t-shirt, me bare feet resting against the cool hardwood floor. The house lay in an unusual stillness, devoid of the familiar hum of the television or the rhythmic clatter of the dishwasher. The clock ticked slowly, each second echoing in the stillness, while the leaves outside whispered softly in the breeze. It was then that I heard the knock. It was neither the gentle tentative knock of a delivery person nor the urgent pounding off Simeon in haste. It was resolute, intentional. A frown creased my brow. Surprise was etched on my face. I hadn't anticipated a visitor. Intrigued, I drew me hands on a kitchen towel and made my way to the door. As I drew the door, Penny was met with an unexpected sight. Ethan, husband of my neighbor, Ethan possessed a natural poise that exuded acquiescent assurance. In his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair that added to his distinguished appearance, he exuded a friendly, easygoing demeanor. Over the years, our interactions have been limited, polite nods and fleeting conversations, a wave as he tended to his salon, or a brief exchange when our paths happened to cross outside. Yet today he found himself on my porch, hands buried deep in the pockets of his jeans, a subtle fur etched across his brow. "Hey, Lydia," he said, his voice carrying a warmth yet tinged with an elusive inner current that I couldn't fully decipher. I apologized for arriving without prior notice. I offered a courteous smile, gracefully stepping aside to grant him entry. "No problem. Is everything all right?" He paused for a brief moment before crossing the threshold. "Indeed, I simply required a moment to catch my breath." I nodded, gently shutting the door as he stepped away. "Would you like some coffee?" he suggested, gesturing toward the kitchen. Let out a breath, his fingers weaving through his hair that would be wonderfully approached the counter, acutely aware of his presence looming behind me. His stance, the way he leaned against the edge of the island, hinted that he wasn't merely here for coffee. As I poured, definitely broke the silence. "Once more, home has been a bit complicated," he confessed. He simply required a moment to escape. I cast a fleeting look back at him, the coffee pot cradled in one hand. "Understand, is everything all right with Claire?" Celia, his wife, was an enchanting woman, perpetually composed, eternally gracious. Over, I had observed recently that one of them seemed less harmonious than they had in the past. Smiles had become a reoccurrence, and shared glances had dwindled to almost nothing. Ethan released a soft chuckle, though it failed to illuminate his eyes. "Marriage, it seems, is not without its challenges." I acknowledged with a nod. "Once in a time that feels distant now. I experienced the end of marriage. I understood the transformative nature of love, how it could evolve into something almost unrecognizable." I passed him his cup, and in that fleeting instant, as our fingers grazed, an unusual spark seemed to linger in the atmosphere. Something entirely unforeseen. He appeared to sense it as well, for he cleared his throat and swiftly withdrew his hand. For the next few minutes, our conversation meandered through the mundane, discussing neighbors, shifting weather, and the gentle fading of summer. Yet beneath the surface of the conversation there lingered an unvoiced tension. At a certain moment, he inclined his body forward, his forearms finding a perch on the counter, his gaze probing into my own. "Do you ever sense that you're merely existing, moving through life without purpose?" I swallowed hard, my fingers gripping the cup with increasing intensity. "Indeed, I do." It was a confession I had not anticipated, driving the atmosphere around us grew dense, an unusual tension enveloping the moment. Neither of us averted our gaze. For a fleeting moment, I believed him might utter a word, a phrase that could transform the gravity of this encounter into something deeper. Yet he reclined, realising a soft, airy chuckle. "I apologize for unloading all of that onto you." He smiled, even as my heart raced to touch too quickly. "It's all right." He cast a fleeting look at the clock before rising to his feet. "I ought to make my way back." I inclined my head, trailing bent him toward the door. As he extended his hand toward the handle, a minute of hesitation washed over him, his gaze locking onto mine with an expression that eluded my understanding. "Thank you, Lydia," he murmured softly to hear, and then he vanished into thin air. He shut the door softly, leaning against it, my fingers lingering with warm from the brief contact we had shared. I reassured myself that it wasn't significant. Yet an instinct whispered that this wouldn't be the final occasion Ethan would seek entry. The ensuing days unfolded with an unsettling restlessness. He convinced myself that Ethan's visit was merely that of a neighbor in search of a fleeting reprieve. But his words held no profound significance. Yet if that were indeed the case, what compelled me to endlessly revisit our dialogue in my mind? What compelled me to steal glances at their house each time I ventured outside, pondering if our paths will cross once more. I attempted to set it aside to navigate my daily life as though everything remained unchanged, yet something had indeed transpired a week past before he returned this time. I caught sight of him making his way toward me through the kitchen window. The early evening sky blazed with deep oranges and purples of sunset and hestro with a determination that maddened me. Heart race. I scarcely found a memento gather my thoughts before he rapped at the door. I opened the door to discover him standing there, hands tucked into his pockets. Once more, yet this time his expression held a certain weight, a deliberate intent that was unmistakably. He said, his voice unwavering, nay. Enter. For just a fleeting moment I paused before moving aside. Certainly he strolled by, and as I shut the door, for inhold deeply urging myself to maintain a carefree demeanor, to resist the ergetto dwell on the reality that I had been yearning. For this moment he pivoted to confront me, his gaze locking onto mine with a subtle yet profound intensity. It seems I ought to begin by admitting that I find myself uncertain about my purposing this place. A gentle anxious chuckle escaped my lips. We share that sentiment. Let out a breath. His fingers trail and along the nape of his neck. The other day has been on my mind incessantly. Mr. Mac nodded with tension. Even he raised a hand. I have no intention of overstepping any boundaries. I'm at a loss. Truly, your gaze truly acknowledges me. Presence, are you aware of just how uncommon that is? His words sent a shiver through me. For dear God, I understood precisely what he meant. For so long I had drifted through life feeling unseen and disregarded, yet here stood this mankind and complex right in my kitchen, affirming that I truly mattered. I took a deep breath. Your presence, I said, mystical. Ethan, however, I find myself uncertain about its meaning. He edged nearer, his voice now a mere whisper. I feel the same way. The distance that separated us was alive with an energy that was both silent and unmistakable. My heart raced as he examined my face as though seeking the green light to express more, to act more. In a fleeting minute of abandon, I yearned to allow this enigmatic situation to unravel by me, yet in an instant, as swiftly as the tension had escalated, he withdrew, shaking his head with a wistful grin. I ought to take my leave. I nodded. Even as a part of me yearned to urge him to remain. He paused at the threshold, casting a lingering glance in mid-direction before stepping into the dimming twilight with a soft click off the door, sealing his departure. I found myself leaning against it, a hand resting over my heart. This posed a significant risk, and yet beneath the surface I sensed that this was far from finished. Subsequent days unfolded in a haze, each moment blending into the next. As I walked by Ethan's house, my gaze would inevitably drift in his direction, a part of me always hoping to catch a glimpse of him standing there poised and waiting. Yet he never returned, not for days. When in the silence that enveloped us deepened, and I felt its weight pressing down on my chest, the sensation of his presence lingered in my mind, an undeniable attraction that enveloped me. Whenever we found ourselves in close proximity, I repeatedly reminded myself of my own folly. He had entered into Thebans of matrimony. I was not the object of anyone's desire. It was foolish of me to dwell on thoughts of him, yet failure of envisioning what it would be like to be truly noticed, genuine, noticed by someone of his caliber was the most irresistible. Yet, as twilight embraced the sky and the last rays of sunlight surrendered to the encroaching night, a familiar knock echoed through stillness. This time, as I swung the door open, there stood Ethan, once more framed by the fading light. His expression bore a different weight this time, more solemn, infused with a resolute determination. I need to talk to you, Lydia, he murmured gently. I forced out the knot that had settled in my throat. Then he entered unbidden, disregarding the need for an invitation. You occupy my thoughts incessantly. The words, sound complicated, hung in the atmosphere between us with a profound heaviness. For an extended pause, neither of us sturdy are married, I murmured, though the words felt like a departure from what it really wished to express. He nodded with deliberation, his gaze fixed intently on me. I understand, yet my feelings remain unchanged. I parted my lips to utter a sound, yet the words eluded me. The weight of the moment seemed to hold me captive, rendering me immobile. I've been with Claire for over 30 years. He continued, his voice trembling with emotion for the first time in ages. Your presence, Maximil, truly alive. I felt my breath catch in my chest, his gaze was penetrating, as though he could see into depths of my being, uncovering the silent fragments I had hidden for ages. I didn't know what to do with that, admitted the vulnerability in his voice, drawing me closer. I don't know either, I replied, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. All pretense had vanished, leaving behind a kind void where small talk-ons thrived. The distance that once separated us had diminished to a whisper, allowing me to sense the heat of his breath and catch the gentle quiver of fists exhale, his gaze held firm, imbued with a depth that transcended mere desire. Revealing a bond one had yet to recognize, we were both yearning for. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Lydia, he said softly, but I can't bear the thought of losing this feeling. My heart raced, every part of me drawn to him, yet I restrained myself fervently, searching for the words that would anchor me to reason. I don't want to hurt you either, Ethan, I murmured, me voice quivering, but it's intricate for an extended period. Buriex did nothing but silence. The gravity of our words lingered in the atmosphere of you. And charged as if a tempest were brewing, with neither of us daring to share the silence. At last he withdrew, his shoulders drooping ever so slightly. No, he said, his voice heavy with feeling. I'm sorry, Lydia, he said, turning toward the door, yet just as he approached the handle, I called out, Ethan, wait. He paused, gazing at me, his face reflecting a blend of hope and uncertainty. In that fleeting moment, an inexplicable force swept through me, causing the walls I had meticulously struck around my heart to crumble away. I made my way across the room to position myself before him. I too lacked the answers, I murmured softly, yet I cannot feign that everything remains the same. The weight of my emotions is impossible to overlook. He extended his hand cautiously, as if gauging the atmosphere that surrounded us. His hand softly grazed mine, and the spark between us ignited anew. I don't want to walk away from this, he murmured, his voice barely rising above a whispered text. I didn't either, I whispered back. And at long last we bridged the gap. It was never a matter of crossing a line. It was never a matter of seizing what did not belong to us. It was a moment where two selves recognized the bond they had forged, their irresistible attraction that had been intensifying over time. In that instant, an unspoken recognition passed between us, signaling that we had arrived at a realm of shared comprehension without masks or assumptions, merely the unfiltered truth of two spirits navigating the path ahead. As he deeper that evening, an inexplicable lightness hung in the air between us. It wasn't there a solution I had expected, but it was something else. Something just as powerful, though we lacked all themes words in that moment. I truly felt acknowledged. In that moment it dawned that often the mere act of being acknowledged is the essential spark needed to start anew.